James Sackville is the founder of Athletes in Recruitment. While in school, James became dismayed by the recruiting experience he and his teammates lived through. So he set out to fix it. A three-sided platform that is a cross between LinkedIn and a dating app, but for recruiting. Those are his words, by the way. Athletes can promote themselves to coaches and swipe right on colleges they have interest in.
Bro, we are both 14. How do you be getting letters already? I'll be on the Air app.
Coaches can also sort, filter, and swipe on a prospective athlete based on recruiting needs that they have.
And that's all, hey, because me and all the coaches say we're on the Air app, right?
Air has a third side, which is for liaisons, a high school coach, a private trainer, a parent, or guardian who can advocate for high school athletes and act as an intermediary. They already have 36,000 users, including 600 plus football coaches, and they're going to expand and do other sports soon. Athletes in Recruitment, super cool site. James and I had an awesome conversation. Hey, James, what's happening? I'm so excited to have you on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate your time.
This is always fun to talk about new sports tech platforms, and I'm one of those people that kind of believes, good innovation comes from someone who's lived an experience, that has identified a problem, that sees a way to possibly solve it and takes it on firsthand. So let's get into those early days a little bit and what's inspired you here. You grew up in Melbourne, Australia. You played Aussie rules football. You were recruited to play football in America at SMU. You lived it. So how did you identify the problems? What did you start to see that were the problems that needed fixing and your approach back then?
Yeah, so I, as you said, came over in the States 5 years ago on a full scholarship, but played a sport that was kind of my first love and realized that I wasn't good enough to actually play professionally, which is kind of soul crushing. So then I wanted to figure out what the next big thing was. And I wanted to play not professional sports, but just big crowds. I wanted to have that real atmosphere, I guess you could say. And then the process was like, I dove all into it. I tried to become subject matter expert in the entire process just because that was what I was trying to walk myself into. I tried to learn everything about America. And it was just kind of a broken, kind of a broken system. There was a lot of fragmentation. It was kind of like he said, she said a lot of the time. I didn't feel like there was any straight line part of the equation. It was all wishy-washy. And so that's kind of how I got here. I came through a program that got me here, and I was incredibly thankful to go to SMU, and I played. I had a good career and everything, but I felt like it could have gone a lot smoother, and I thought it was just an international problem. And then when I got to the States, realized that it was probably more prevalent, even more so domestically than it was for an international student athlete. And that's where my mind started going about, okay, there's probably something here. So, yeah.
So a lot of your teammates were expressing some of the same problems, my recruitment was terrible, or this was hard, or...
Yeah, I heard every excuse under the sun, really, from sitting in the locker room at a Division I program of I should have gone to this school, I should have gone to that school. My high school coach screwed me. I got injured my junior year. I came from a low socioeconomic family and I couldn't afford to go to these camps. Every excuse that you could hear, whether they're valid or not, that's beside the point. I heard all of them and I was like, hold on a second. I'm living in Dallas, Texas. I'm going to a Division I university in Dallas. It's meant to be pretty much the ultimate hotbed for football talent in the whole country. And I'm dealing with Texas recruits having these problems. What about everyone else?
That's great perspective.
So that's kind of how I was like, oh, there's something here. No, I needed to flesh what that was, but the ideas had been spinning since the day I pretty much walked on campus in 2016.
Okay, there's an interesting conversation here, though, in that a lot of people see problems but never do anything about them. They'll sit back and they'll complain. They'll have a problem. They'll tell their friends about it. They'll post it on Facebook, I can't believe this happened to me. You took this on and said, I'm the person that can help solve this. Where did that come from? Where did that kind of strength and attitude come from for you?
My folks, definitely. I was raised in a household by two entrepreneurs, but my mum and dad both have run successful businesses for, my entire childhood. There was never a time in my life where I would come home at the end of the day and mum and or dad had to report to someone else, It was like they were their own boss and, they had people working for them. So that's all I've ever really known. I may not be able to figure out how they run their actual businesses, but the general principles of this is how life should be lived, of you go build something rather than go get hired. That was my thought process forever. So it sounds, perhaps a little odd to the traditional year, but like I've never really thought like go get a job. It was always just like, what am I going to go create? So probably a bit of a different
It's a great
perspective than
attitude. I
most.
mean, like,
It's a bit of a different perspective
yeah,
than
if you
most.
can do it, why not? Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I do find that's the entrepreneurial spirit. Like I've interviewed a lot of different entrepreneurs in sports and otherwise, and you do see that attitude come through of, well, why not me? Why shouldn't I do it? Why can't I create and fix this problem? And it's definitely interesting to see that it came inspired from your parents a little bit too. You turned down a 5th year of eligibility where you could have continued playing. And I talked to a lot of athletes who are like, once it's done, they miss that locker room vibe, being around teammates. Like that's a fun time of your life. But you pushed that down and said, no, I want to go start athletes in recruitment. Why was that an important decision for you?
That's a loaded question. To be frank, so I came over. I'd never played a game of college football. I've never played a game of football, until I stepped foot on campus in America. But the first game of football that I ever played was at the Division 1 level. So like, you hear these kids and these stories of like, I've played this game since I was 5 years old and it's all I've ever known. And it's, it's my first love, etc. Like American football wasn't that for me. It was like very much like I happen to be pretty good at this like specific skill set in which I learnt in a completely different sport halfway across the world. And, it provided me all of these opportunities, a free education, the ability to network, expand my horizons, live on the other side of the world, etc. But like, I never like grew up being like, I love football. Like I can't give this up. I saw it even before I stepped foot on campus of, let's be really self-aware of what I am as a player, like what sort of school I'm going to, what my perspective was to even before I got to school, right? Like when in the program that I came through, like Michael Dixon, who's the all-pro punter for the Seattle Seahawks, Mish Wisnowski, who plays for San Francisco, Jordan Berry, Aaron Sipos, all these guys that are now playing in the NFL were there, and I was training with them before I even moved to America. So I already knew visually what the cream of the crop looked like from a skill level and a physical makeup level. And I knew before I even left, I was like, I am not that. Like I straight up knew, I was like, if that's what the best 32 in the world look like, I am not that. Now, on a good day, could I compete with them? Sure. But that's on my good day and that's on their bad day, So I was kind of like, okay, let's be really self-aware here. Let's go get a quality education. Let's go to a city where there's a really good business school, etc. Hot city. I had the opportunity to play right away. The network of SMU is, fantastic. And that's what I valued more than football, which kind of gets me back to your question, which is like, I never loved it, to be frank. Never loved football. I loved my teammates, but like I had a really hard time of like being, really well liked. And I loved all my friends and my teammates and everything. And I was everyone's best friend Sunday through Friday. And then on Saturdays, no one wanted to talk to me because if I was running out on the field, it was probably a bad thing.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like
great perspective.
It's kind of like shit, like I don't want to do that because like that didn't seem like any fun to me. I wanted to have like more participation and control more of the game. And I felt like I was capable, but obviously I didn't play this sport, so I'm not a wide receiver, I'm not a quarterback, a linebacker, etc. And I understood my role, but it was like I'm not going to play in the NFL. I knew that before I even stepped foot on campus, and 4 games into my freshman year, that was very much validated. I saw some of the humans of the size of just these bodies, and I was like, I'm going to go enjoy my 4 years, and it doesn't mean I'm not going to like care about football, but like I'm going to go figure out everything else that school has to offer and university culture has to offer other than just, my goal is to be one of 32 people in the world. If you were the 33rd best accountant in the world, you're probably doing pretty good for yourself, and if you're the 33rd best punter, you're sitting on the couch waiting for a phone call, making $0, living on mom's couch. And I was just kind of like, I'm like, I don't know if that's it for me. Now, if I was like a top 10 talent, like sure. And I, for whatever reason, was sitting on the couch, but I knew that I was talented enough, different conversation. But I think the self-awareness part is the big thing. So like I had the opportunity to play a 5th year. The whole thought process behind it was I was never going to get my graduate degree, didn't care for it. I was like, I'm just going to go play one more year of football and network at a really, really big school to amplify what I was building already with air. That was the logic entirely. And then COVID happened and, there was opportunities, and I had the very real opportunities to play, SEC football last year, and turn them down because I was just kind of like, the cost benefit analysis of that didn't make sense. I'd already started the business, and like there was just
Where's the
there was
higher
too
ceiling?
Yeah, it was like, so I'm either going to be done with my football career in January in a sport that I don't really love playing, that is, or I'm just going to go all in on something that I have 100% control of the outcome, and I'm going to back myself in every single day of the week. And if I fail, it's only my fault. If I succeed, it's myself and my team's success. So that was
So
kind
let's
of,
talk about the product. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk about the product. We have a lot of student athletes in our audience. I'm sure a lot of them are nodding their heads right now. We have a lot of sports tech people that are probably excited to learn about what you're up to. So let's dig into the product a little bit deeper. Explain it to us. What does Athletes in Recruitment do? How does it work?
Yeah, so AIR essentially combines the concepts of LinkedIn and a dating app, but specifically for collegiate athletic recruiting. So a student athlete can create their own athletic resume, promote themselves to relevant college coaches, compare themselves with their peers, swipe left and or right on a university based on their specific wants and needs. Might be high academic school, part of the country, etc. Maybe division, level of quality of play, etc. Whatever the kid wants to preference as the type of school. And then on the complete other side of the equation, the college coach has the ability to do the same, where they can sort, filter, and swipe on a prospective student athlete based on their specific wants and needs. And they can essentially quite literally build their own player. So whether it's a physical trait, an academic trait, a location, they're looking for a JUCO kid, a high school kid, what star is he, etc. How fast he runs, how fast he runs, how high he jumps, you name it, who else has offered him. They can quite literally take their cream of the crop. And the way in which they do that is they swipe left on the guys that they're not interested in. They swipe right on the guys that they are interested in. No different than that of a dating app. So that's the model. And then we also have a third user, which is the liaison. So that's the high school coach, the private trainer, the recruiting service, parent, guardian, etc. Someone that acts as that third party or intermediary between the athlete and the coach. For a few reasons. To be frank, there are rules and regulations on when communication can occur between the athlete and the coach. It's really, really important to have that person representing you. And then really the way in which we've looked at this as a company is, if you're applying for a job, you and I are applying for a job, we're equally as qualified, equally as talented. And I have 3 letters of expert witness recommendation letters and 2 of which know the hiring manager directly. And you, who are just as qualified as I, have none of that. Who's probably more likely to get the job? Probably the person that has two expert witnesses vouching for them, right? Recruiting is absolutely no different. If you're not a top 500 kid in the country, you're going to need help, whether that's your high school coach or a private trainer or, an uncle that played at that school, whatever it may be, you're going to need someone's help. So we've brought that together all in the one platform and linked all the profiles together to make it seamless.
So when we started out this conversation, we talked about identifying a problem, and you lived through it, and then, coming up with an idea. It's a whole nother thing to execute on it. It's a whole nother thing to have it become a reality and go from that phase of ideation to creation, and also successful creation. As you look back, and you only launched in May? It was only a short time ago?
Like a few days, 3 days and 3 months and a few days right now.
That's amazing. As you look back at kind of your process as you look back from your process from idea to where you are now, what were some of those key moments that took AIR from good idea to 36,000 users, including over 600 college coaches from over 225 universities? Those are some pretty good metrics to get started with. What got you there?
Yeah, a lot of failure, like an overwhelming amount of failure before we even launched the application. We founded the business, 10 days before COVID hit. So it was very much like we're up against it from before we even started. It was just, kind of an idea, and we'd had the first MVP designs type of deal. And we, iterated, countless amounts of times, developed a team, went through a few different, early employees of the company, some that have, been fantastic, some that it just wasn't the right fit, and that's okay. And then, really kind of over the last 3 months, which, to kind of get to I wouldn't call it success yet, but good start, I guess you could say. It's been really, really maniacal on what the core purpose of the mission is, and that's to put the athlete first. I'm of the fundamental opinion that we're living in a consumer-facing society, and the B2B approach, while it works, if there are a whole lot of clients per se, there aren't that many in collegiate athletics. There are only 2,000 schools, in which there's 130 at the Division 1 level, and then you have to win the business of 130 of them and charge them whatever the enterprise value of your software is. But if you look at just the wants and the needs factor based on the consumer, there is a significant desperate push of the athlete because they're desperate for an opportunity, and only 6% of high school football players play in college type of deal. So you're the back is up against it from the start, and you have to work really, really hard to get noticed, right? So we kind of looked at it and we were like, there are so many athletes that should fit into that 6%, but don't for whatever reason. And like there's no longer a valid excuse from an exposure piece. Like the idea of like, I didn't get enough exposure, I was slighted, this, that, and the other should no longer be a valid excuse, because Air solves that entire product. And putting the athlete first and make it really consumer driven rather than enterprise driven, is really what I believe the fundamental early success of the platform.
Yeah, it makes sense. And if there's a pretty clear business case to make too, if you are able, so I'm assuming from what you just said, that the athletes themselves pay a monthly fee, subscription fee, some sort of model there. What's the basic general model, business model?
Yeah, so it's freemium. It's a freemium model. So we looked at the college coach in a traditional dating app model, right? In a perfect world, for any dating app, you want 50% in regards to gender or whoever the two parties you are that you want to match up, right? That's the ideal scenario for everyone involved. There are 25 million kids across the world that want to play collegiate athletics every year in the States. There are only 2,000 schools,
Right.
so the model had to be different from the start, because we just didn't have enough distribution on one side we didn't have enough users on one side. You can't have 65,000 coaches across all sports and 25 million kids. It's just way too big of a difference. And it's also, the chicken or the egg scenario, right? When you've got a platform with 0 users, like how do you get the first one? You have to give thing, you have to give something away. You can't charge it from everyone, because otherwise, it's too hard early. So like we don't charge a single dollar from the universities or the college coaches, by design, to be frank. The numbers just don't make sense for that to occur. And then it's a freemium model, just like LinkedIn has a freemium model, where you can pay for the premium version of LinkedIn for advanced features, et cetera, whatever the functionality you're looking for, just like in a traditional dating app. If you want more exposure, you have the ability to pay for it, to get noticed by whoever it is that you're trying to get noticed by in a dating app setting, and which is the same social psychology of recruiting. Like recruiting and dating are quite literally identical from a social psychology perspective. It takes two to tango.
Go ahead.
It takes 2 to tango, and it's really, really easy to figure out what you're attracted to. Almost instantaneous to figure it out.
We've done the same modeling sometimes at our organization, because we have a premium job board when we do recruiting work from the employment standpoint, and we've talked about that a lot of times and saying like, our world is very akin to a dating app, so let's look at some of those features and see if they make sense for ours. So I totally get where you're coming at it from, and it makes sense if you're thinking of it from a student athlete perspective. There's a pretty clear business case to make too. If you pay for or just use the freemium product, there could be great benefit to you of scholarship money, whatever could come to you, opportunities, and it starts to pencil really quick. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's most definitely the case. So, I mean, essentially, you've got a scenario here where I'll just use another dating app model, or even LinkedIn for that matter. You could pay for the premium versions of any of those, companies, whether it's LinkedIn, Hinge, Bumble, Tinder, you name it, right? If you pay for the premium version,
I'm a married man, so I'm not on any of those, but I'll take your word for it.
That's okay. These were market research purposes.
Right, of course.
Yeah. But if you pay for the premium version of any of those applications and you still don't get, matches, right? That is not the fault of the dating app. that's a pretty clear indication of the market telling you that you're not attractive to the other party that you're trying to attract, right? And that's okay. Like, the market is the market. There's nothing that it's not a glitch in the algorithm from Hinge, Bumble, or Tinder that you didn't get any matches if you paid for it. It's just the
Right.
reality of the situation, right? Like, the other person on the other side of the screen has to like you just as much as you like them for this to work. So coaches have to like you. It doesn't matter. Like, but the whole thing is, like, there are these companies out there within, recruiting that consider themselves services where, they'll be like, 5'6" Johnny that wants to play quarterback at Alabama. Anyone with, 2 cents to rub together could tell you that, like, that kid that's 5'6" is not going to play quarterback at Alabama. But there are companies out there that will say, yeah, for $5,000, we'll make the phone calls and we'll make it happen. Doesn't matter. Like, that's not going to happen, So for us, it was kind of like, okay, if you want to pay like a very, very fair and reasonable $20 a month to figure out if you're good enough, and if after 1 month you're like, I'm still the 5'5" quarterback that's trying to play at Alabama, probably not going to happen. That's okay. I'd rather you do that than go spend $5,000 and you learn yourself, because there are so many parents out there, where they tell their kids that they're the next Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Tom Brady, and it's like, you're probably not. If you work really hard and you invest in yourself, maybe, but like, the chances are very much stacked against you. And then all of these kids hit 16, 17 and they're like, why aren't I Tom Brady or LeBron James yet? And it's like, well, because you don't possess the physical gifts and the genetic makeup and the mental makeup to be able to go and do that. So that's kind of what we've built here, of like, put the athlete first, make it incredibly affordable, easy to use. And then have you figure it out. The market is the market. If no one likes you, that's a pretty good indication the market's telling you that you maybe aren't as good as you think you are, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world if you're not good enough to play college football, or any other sport within collegiate athletics for that matter.
It is amazing. My daughter's in high school and she plays field hockey, and the first day of practice every year they warn them that there will be predatory practices. There will be recruiter people that will come to you and they will tell you, pay us X amount of dollars, we'll get you to the top of the pile with this school and this school and this school. And a lot of times, to your point, it's crap. It's baloney, and they're just taking their money. Is part of your inspiration for this too, and giving the power and the power back to the athletes, obviously, but also it's part of your inspiration, the transparency and credibility coming back to the industry as well?
Yeah. So like, you just made the mention of like, XYZ company or person will go and say, pay me X amount of dollars and we'll talk to coaches for you. We are not a service in any way, shape, or form. Like, we are not going to go talk to any coach for any athlete, period. We've built the tool and the platform for you to go figure it out yourself. And if you're good enough, great. If you're not good enough, that's also okay. If you want to keep fighting, use Air to keep fighting, just like you use LinkedIn to go and find a job, or help yourself in the professional setting of going to get a new job, hiring someone, whatever it might be. LinkedIn doesn't offer one-on-one consulting, like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
We're the same. We're not sitting here being like, pay me X amount of dollars and I'll get you to your dream school, even if you've got no fighting chance in getting to your dream school, at least to play on a sporting team. Now, you can go there as a regular student if you get in, but like, that's kind of the model that we've taken. And we're not sitting here trying to be predatory in any way, shape, or form. If you pay $0 for Air and you get your scholarship, fantastic. Awesome. That means that you're really good. Good for you. Like, like, we as a company will celebrate that, because it means that, people are having success on the platform. You're using the platform to do exactly what it was designed to do, which is give you a tool to get recruited, to pursue your dreams, play at the next level. And, you hear the age-old phrase of like, college isn't a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. I mean, depending on where you go, it's very real. The network of, some of the most prestigious universities holds you for your entire professional career, regardless of the sport, right? So it is, I do believe in that statement. So it is really, really important to invest early in it, because the way that recruiting and getting a scholarship should be looked at is getting a really highly paid job between the ages of 18 and 23. We all know how bad of a deal student debt is in this country. If you can get sport to pay for your education, I think that's a pretty good vehicle, especially considering how few college athletes, regardless of sport, play at the next level. So, yeah.
I love this idea of leveling the playing field, giving everybody equal opportunity to find out where their market is or if their market even exists. I love the idea of being transparent and credible and just being the market. I love it. It all makes perfect sense. How have coaches responded to it so far? What's the feedback been from that side?
Really positive. So there's only two types of, as much on the recruiting side as the networking side. There are only two types of coaches in the world, regardless of sport: coaches that have been fired and coaches that are going to be fired.
Oh, yeah.
There's no such thing as job security in any coaching profession, period, end of story. But within coaching, for whatever reason, networking is not encouraged. It's odd. You have to kind of be loyal to the head coach, etc. And you can't really, if you're in any other real profession, you'd probably be shopping yourself around while you're in your existing job to go get another one, right? And in coaching, that's kind of frowned upon. But we're doing it in a discreet way where you can network, promote your athletic resume of where you played, where you coach, what your football or sport philosophy is, right? And network within the coaching community on top of obviously being able to recruit in a more efficient manner. So it's two-sided on the coaching side of things. Unfortunately, we're just in football for right now, but we will be scaling into all sports. Is coaches really only go to conventions for maybe 10 days of the year, and then the rest is they don't talk to any other coaches other than, coaches that they already knew, because that's just kind of the way it is. And it should be, you network every day because you never know when you're going to need the next job. And it's not a matter of if, but when you are going to be in December and, 1 out of every 3 years, you're going to have to find a new job, whether that be that the head coach is successful and took you to the next one, or maybe the head coach wasn't successful and the whole staff got fired. It's just kind of, it depends. So, yeah, we're giving those coaches the ability to go do that, as well as obviously, recruit in a more efficient manner and filter and tailor towards their own specific wants and needs and save time, really. I mean, that's the number one thing that the coaches especially can't get back, is just how much time it takes to evaluate. So we're saving them time there as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure they find it as a nice efficiency tool. You talked about being primarily in NCAA football right now, and possibly or planning to expand to other sports.
Yeah.
Is that the sweet spot? And that a lot of these other peripheral programs are not quite as high revenue generating programs. They might have that's a lot of opportunity where the NCAA market may be somewhat flooded with recruitment efforts. The others may not be quite as much, and it's a lot more people that are trying to get into those sports that may not have that same exposure that they might get from college football and all the different publications that cover them, et cetera.
Definitely.
Is that an opportunity that you're looking at and saying, okay, that's the area we need to head?
Yeah, most definitely. Especially women's sports, to be frank. I don't think just general society is really aware of there are Title IX rules within collegiate athletic departments. So it's for example, I went to SMU. There were 7 men's sports and 10 women's sports because 48 or 49% of each athletic department has to be made up of female athletes. So football, for example, has 85 scholarship football players, full scholarship. That's mandated. There's no halves in football. It's just full or nothing. So you have to make up the numbers in other women's sports. So there's a lot of opportunity for women's sports where those girls are just as desperate for an opportunity to come get their college, tuition paid for and get themselves in the door as much as a male athlete. So yes, most definitely. We started in football because I came over to the States to play football.
Yeah.
It was my frame of reference. There's the most market, media attention, money in it involved, right? From a traditional setting, B2B setting. But we aren't playing in a traditional B2B world. We're playing in a consumer world. So therefore, I care just as much about the women's volleyball player as I do about the football player. I care just as much about the cheerleader,
that's super cool. Yeah.
the cheerleader, or even the band team as I do, the 5-star basketball recruit. So that's kind of where we've positioned ourselves as a company.
It's interesting. I saw too, as on part of your product outline, that you do allow for the student athletes to include off the field things too, not just player highlights. Is that accurate? That's true?
Yeah, we want to show their personality. I mean, you're recruiting the face of a franchise, right? So
I love that. See, I was thinking too, if we're hiring somebody, if I'm hiring staff, I'm thinking about how they fit into our overall corporate culture and how they're going to impact everything. It's a lot more than just your resume and what you can do. I want to learn about them. And is that one of your major differentiators? I would imagine coaches much really appreciate that because it helps them think about culture as well.
Definitely, yeah. So I mean, kind of going back to like the original, like how quickly can you make a decision on whether an athlete is capable of playing athletically at whatever the school is. Let's say you like the kid, don't love the kid yet. You then go learn and figure it, to your point, everything else out. Is the kid academically capable of getting into school here? Does he or she fit the the system that we're trying to play as a staff? You know, like does everything align? And then you can dive deeper in there. And we're just trying to provide as much frame of reference as possible. But with that being said, we're putting the onus and the responsibility on the user themselves. I'm not in the business, candidly, or we are not in the business, sorry, of saying this publication rated you a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. You know, that's however many journalists' opinion of a kid. You know, but what about the kid actually promoting themselves, right?
Yeah.
That's the big thing here. You know, like if you're applying for a job on LinkedIn, for example, and you don't fill out your LinkedIn profile, you know, it's your fault that you didn't get the job, right? It's just your fault. You filled out 40% of your resume. So like the exact same logic applies for us, and the cream will very much rise to the crop there.
So you mentioned it earlier. How difficult was it and how unexpected was it to start to be an early phase and have a pandemic hit where there's no games, there's not as many recruiting visits, there's a lot of changes going on, everybody's in a chaos state of frame of mind. That couldn't have been an easy period.
No, but I think it was the best thing that ever happened to it, like the state of the company. It just
Go on, yeah.
further validated that like in-person visits weren't, you know, the only way to get eyes on a kid. Pretty much plain and simple. We've now realized that we can use this, right? And I can talk to anyone in the world and I can evaluate talent just like I would if I went to a Friday night game of football and said that kid can play, you know?
Yeah. No, it's great. It's you know what? It's a great way to look at what happened in the last year too, and to think of it as a positive business case and positive user experience.
Yeah. Well, it was also, we had the benefit of, candidly, it was like we didn't have a product live yet, right? So it was like, and we didn't have like a whole amount of money invested in like a physical tool or something of that nature, where it was like, damn, we just lost, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars because now we're paying like rent on a property that like we can't have people come and use on a daily basis in like a sports facility. So like it was just like, oh, we're doing everything like virtually anyway with like our development structure and everything, and we have phone calls, and now I just can't go have coffee with you. We're just doing it over, you know, video instead, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. So I it had its challenges. It was more of just like the unrest of society more so than anything. But as a business, I actually think it gave us a lot of time to get set and then time it up pretty well for, as you know, the world started to come out of lockdown, you know, in May, which is when we launched the application, and, you know, kind of kick things off with a bang. And NIL coming out, you know, 5 weeks after launch certainly helps that equation. And that was, you know, that was intentional from a launch standpoint. So yeah, it's, all of it is, I think, positively contributed.
It's definitely one of those important attributes to layer in flexibility along with innovation and all the other things you're trying to accomplish, is to kind of be allowed to pivot, figure out where the sweet spot is, and have some flexibility through the process. And there's no better indication of that a global pandemic, right, as you're about to launch, it didn't make things very easy. As you look at yourself now, you've earned this label of entrepreneur, founder. How would you describe yourself as your approach, your leadership style? How would you define yourself?
Boy, creative. I like creating things, like building things, really. I mean, I'm an ideas guy. I have 100 of them a day. You know, 99 of them might be bad, but one of them might be like, oh wow, we should pursue that, right? So I let people. I'm very, very firm on the fact that like anyone that joins the company has to like have like a really unfair competitive advantage over me or any other team member, that they're so much better than the next guy that like I couldn't do it, or any of our current team members couldn't do it ourselves, type of deal. And they all, like, from a leadership perspective, like obviously we have a preference to, candidly, of, you know, former athletes, because, you know, the best way to understand the core mission is to have lived it yourself. And, you know, just about every college athlete went through some sort of recruiting process. So, and understands some sort of pains and tribulations that go through with that. So from a leadership standpoint, it's very, let's nurture everyone. Let's build this as together rather than, authoritarian. I don't really, like that environment. I want everything to be collaborative. I want to encourage free thinking and creative ideas. And if you restrict that of the people that work within the company, I think you're leaving so much on the table. You bring people in to want them to have ownership of it as well, just like you do. So I mean, the big thing for me is like, they don't work for me or the company, like I work for them on a daily basis. That's really the model in which I take it, is like, you can't expect any other person within the company to care about something as much as you when you started it. That's unfair and unreasonable, that no one else has as much vested interest in it either, So like for me, it's like, what can I do on a daily basis to amplify everyone else within the organization? And I really mean that. Like,
how many people do you have on staff so far?
We've got with a variety of sectors, whether that be on the dev side of thing or the biz dev, sales, etc. I mean, we're getting pretty close to 20 at this point. So, really, really strong, really strong foundation. I think the big difference of like us to, perhaps a few other companies that have tried to play in kind of this sports world is we're not a sports company. Like, we're a technology company that just happened to find sports as the vehicle for that, right? And that's the big differentiating factor, is like, we're going to invest in technology far more than we're going to invest in anything else. So yeah, I hope that
we'll finish up with this. It's been an awesome conversation, James. Oh, of course it does. No, it's great. It's amazing. We'll finish up with this. It's been an amazing conversation. I've really appreciated it. What's been the best part for you in the last 3 months as you went from launching product to starting to see it take hold? Have there been moments where you've been able to sit back and enjoy it? Have there been special moments, or has it just been go, go, go?
I have to remind myself to, open my eyes a little bit and look at, somewhat of success. I have a real hard time. I've kind of just kept it. It's always on to the next thing. But yeah, it's been nice and validating that like not only the product works, it's success, it's, we're getting positive feedback, but I kind of pride myself on like growth hacking as a marketing skill set that is far from traditional, to be frank. And I feel as though my ability and our ability as a company to growth hack has been like the most validating, because I already knew the tech was good. I knew the product was good. I knew people were going to enjoy it, but it was like, how do we actually talk to the consumer? And that was like my big thing. It's like, there's no point of, of making the shiniest, brightest object if no one knows about it and no one cares about it. So like, I take major pride, to be frank, in the early success of the growth, because I feel as though the validation of growth hacking for us has worked, which like, honestly, I'm probably the most proud selfishly, because that's kind of my domain from that perspective.
All right, I can't leave it there. I got to ask a follow-up question on that. So what's been your key then? What has been your way of growth hacking a little bit? If you're taking an unconventional approach, what have you, not to give out any massive secrets, but like, what's one example of something you've done a little bit off the beaten path?
I think the hardest thing in the world to do as a new company is to build brand and build brand identity. Mm-hmm. How are you meant to convey a message when no one knows you because you just popped up on the scene out of nowhere yesterday, right? It's just about impossible. It's pretty much impossible unless you've got millions and millions of dollars in funding to go and invest in brand loyalty that like, you don't even care about conversion. It's just like, now people know about you, which like isn't always
just brand awareness, just spread it everywhere. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, it's pretty hard to measure that from a conversion standpoint. But really for us, it was like, okay, who's our target demo? Skewed young, right? Skewed teenage. Where's teenagers spending a lot of their time? Probably TikTok and Snapchat. Who do the 13 to 17-year-old kids watch TV anymore? Probably not. This is the TV. Where are they spending all their time? Yep. TikTok or Snapchat and Instagram. So the 13-year-old boy or 17-year-old boy cares a hell of a lot less about Jake Gyllenhaal, traditional A-list celebrity, than he does about YouTube creator destroying, or TikTok creator, Thad Boy, for example, who has 1.5 million followers and a really engaged audience talking about football. So for us, it was kind of like, why on earth would I invest money in places where the attention of who I'm trying to attract is not there when I can have a pretty sure bet that this content creator has already built their audience. I already know what the target demographic of their audience is because that's the content that they make, and his audience are my customers. So it made no sense for me to go elsewhere. And he or she, as the content creator, have built that relationship with the audience already, right? So they trust that person. I mean, I'll speak from personal experience. Yep. There's a content creator called Casey Neistat who made a daily vlog talking about all things New York City, videography, photography, building a business. He actually built a tech company on YouTube, and he made a daily vlog for like 2 years. If Casey Neistat, like, I would get so much more excited right now to meet Casey Neistat than I would, traditional A-list celebrity, because I feel as though I have a personal relationship with Casey Neistat. Casey's never met me before. I've never met Casey, but I know everything about Casey Neistat's life. I know all about his family life. I know about his office. I know about what he does for a living. I know what he's interested in, because I feel like I have a personal relationship with the guy, right? So from a brand
and if he recommended a camera, you'd probably buy it.
100%, because I trust him above all else, because I recognize him as subject matter expert. So that, and then you look at, like, that works when the audience that you're trying to attract is also watching. And that's really unique for us, which is, I think the fact that, like, I'm fresh out of school and, quote unquote young is the best advantage for us as a company, because 5 minutes ago I was the consumer. I just went through it. So I still think like the consumer, whereas, the traditional middle-aged father that had a kid that went through the recruiting process and said, this is broken, but it's like, it's not your fault or any other, middle-aged father or mother that had a kid go through it. But like, it is impossible for you to understand the consumer as well as I do, because you're so far removed, even though they live in your household, even though the 15 or 16-year-old boy or girl lives under your roof, you don't understand on what on earth what that kid's going through or how they're thinking about things or what they're consuming, but I do. So I feel as though that's like our unfair competitive advantage of, like, truly understanding the consumer and going about it in that direction. And I feel as though, I mean, that's been, the single greatest value add that we've had. I mean, our customer acquisition cost is very, very good because of our ability to growth hack in that capacity. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Lean into what you're doing because it's working. Yeah, lean into what you're doing because it's working and it's inspiring and it's a really cool product that I'll probably sign my daughter up for within the next 10 minutes. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's really great to get to know you and your product.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. Appreciate your time.